Welcome back to She's Gotta Have Jesus, our mini podcast segment where we have a devotional follow-up to our episode. And in our recent episode, we were, just discussing our missions trip and what it means to be on a mission, which ultimately led us to servanthood and servant leadership. So I want to reference actually something that we talked about and I personally spoke on and led a activity that was in regards to servant leadership and referenced this passage, which Jesus is with the disciples and James and John are asking him basically, how do we guarantee ourselves to go on and be in glory with you? And Jesus turns to them and says in Mark chapter 10, I'm going to start at verse 42. Jesus called them over and said to them, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those in high positions act as tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. On the contrary, whoever wants to become great among you will be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you will be a slave to all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many."
I love that passage because we know that Jesus is our ultimate example. And he was never an exception to anything he said.
Yeah.
He did everything that he requires of us. And so I just love that. You know how you could follow a leader that doesn't actually do what they're asking you to?
Yes.
But that is not him. And I think even going back, if you watch our episode about our missions trip, one thing that we didn't mention was this really cool activity that Lauren presented because we were doing a workshop. And before we started all that, she had a series of questions that she asked. And we had everyone stand along one side of the room in a line. And she was on the opposite side asking the questions. And for every question she asked, they would take a step forward if they agreed with that. And we started with the question, obvious questions about leadership. Have you held a leadership role within the last 2 years or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think
the first question.
Yeah, well, the first question was, would you consider yourself a strong leader? And
yes,
that was always so shocking and interesting to see because almost every time that we did it, there was almost no one that stepped forward.
Correct.
And yeah, go ahead, continue.
So it was interesting because no one considered themselves a strong leader. And yet at the end, so it started with obvious leadership questions or what would look more black and white. And then it ended with more leadership characteristics or character qualities. And one of the last questions that blew me away when you did this was we asked, how many of you have forgiven someone recently or ever who betrayed you or took advantage of you or didn't maybe seem, like they
didn't ask for your forgiveness.
Exactly. And when I say people were taking leaps forward, it was unbelievable. So here you have this dichotomy of, I don't see myself as a strong leader, but then I've forgiven people that were almost unforgivable, if you will, or had done unforgivable things.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus did when he gave his life as a ransom for many, right? He forgave what would be seemingly unforgivable things. And so it's almost the reverse, right? Here we see that Jesus shows us what it really means to be a leader. And recently someone told me there's no such thing, they heard it on a podcast, as a servant leader. I think maybe Craig Groeschel said that or something. It's just leadership.
Yep. That's ultimately what we came to, is that we were talking about servant leadership. It was the questions that I asked that were about servanthood, basically serving others, allowing others to, even be before you, making spaces for them to excel. And that servanthood, they were very confident in, not as confident with thinking that they're a leader, but the two literally go hand in hand.
Exactly.
So what we were able to reveal is that being a great servant is the epitome of what being a leader is and what a leader should be. What you spoke about is that somebody asking you to do things that they wouldn't even do themselves is just somebody being a boss or, somebody telling you what to do. A true leader is because they are serving the people that they are leading.
Exactly. So it's really just about what is leadership. And Jesus paints that picture before any podcast or book was ever written about leadership. Like, we have so many things we can consume now about it. And in like 3 verses, he says exactly what it is. If anybody wants to be great among you, if you want to have a title or a position or whatever, it's not about that. It's about serving people. And so I just think, this speaks for itself. And we see that in Jesus's life. And our encouragement to you would be, ponder that. Are you the example of what a leader should be through the way that you serve? And that's whether how you serve. One thing I was convicted of, how I serve my husband. Like, how you're serving people in your home, how you're serving people in your job, in your community. All of those things are part of servanthood, and ultimately servanthood is leadership.
Yep. What stands out to me is that he says, whoever among you wants to be great, whoever wants to become great among you. Everyone wants to be great. So he didn't even say like whoever wants to be such a great leader, whoever wants to be great is in general is you need to be serving. And the message that we often hear is basically serve yourself. Nobody wants to admit to that. Like, I'm just going to serve myself. But you need this. This is what's going to make you better. Everything that is marketed to us is towards making ourselves great. And Jesus is saying, if you want to be great,
make other people great.
Yep.
That's basically
serve
what he's
others.
saying.
Yep.
Do
elevate
great
others
things for other people.
Right. Which is ultimately exactly what he did for us. That's what made him great.
Exactly. Most talked about person in the history of the world.
Yep.
Whether it's people in favor of Christ or not, he is the most talked about person ever.
And it's because of his servant leadership, which is ultimately leadership and serving others and laying down his life on the line for us, what he did for us, what he did for other people. Nothing about what he was doing was for himself. So
and all throughout his life, we can hear him saying, I'm about my Father's business. I'm about my Father's business. He didn't have an agenda, even though he was God. He knew what the agenda was, which is ultimately to give his life so that we could be rescued. So yeah, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
If you want to be great, let's serve.
Serve. Amen.
All right. How are you serving today?
How am I serving today? I will be serving by making sure that my house is in its best shape for my husband.
That is very great. I kind of prepped yesterday because I'm working on continuing to serve my husband well. I made some food for today in advance. So I will be serving him by making sure he has a meal.
Amazing. And anyone I encounter today, I don't know. I don't plan to necessarily encounter anyone today. But yes, anyone that we encounter, we can serve by just, encouragement.
Serve people with kindness.
Yeah, with kindness, for sure. I try to be more conscious of that. It's just like, I've had people kind of just make my day by a compliment or whatever else. And I'm like, I need to be more mindful to do that because it literally costs you nothing. And it can be so impactful for other people.
It's true.
Yeah.
I'm going to serve people by letting them come into the lane that I'm in.
Wow, that is very kind.
I literally, somebody was talking about that recently, and I was like, you know what? I need to be better at that.
That's very kind.
Because on the road,
letting people ahead,
I don't always show my best self.
We'll pray on that.
Everything.
We'll pray on that.
Yeah, we all got work to do, though. So, yeah. Thanks for joining, guys.
Thank you for joining us on She's Gotta Have Jesus. We will see you in the next one.
Bye.